I found myself in the part of motherhood where I feel this clear distinction between me and my children. I know where I end and they begin. And
Right.
I'm not saying that anything else is bad or worse. And I say all this because I don't think this gets talked about enough.
Today's episode is brought to you by Piggy Paint Nail Polish, the nail polish brand moms actually trust. Created by a mom who wanted safer products for her kids, Piggy Paint is non-toxic, virtually odorless, and water-based, so your little ones can paint without the harsh chemicals. It dries hard, lasts long, and comes in the cutest colors. If you want fun nails without the fumes or worry, head to piggypaint.com and feel good about what's going on your kids' hands. Welcome back to the Running Wine Mom podcast. I'm your host, Samantha Selinsky, aka the Running Wine Mom. Today, we're diving deep into the messy, beautiful, courageous work of becoming the woman you actually want to be, not the one life has pushed you into by default. My guest today is someone who has helped millions of women reclaim their voice, break patterns, and step fully into their worth. Andrea Owen is a best-selling author, a powerhouse speaker, and a straight-shooting guide for anyone ready to stop living on autopilot and start living like they give a damn. Her books are staples for women who are done shrinking, done people-pleasing, and ready to create real, lasting change, even in the middle of motherhood, chaos, and a mile-long to-do list. Today, we're talking about shame, boundaries, identity, joy, and the bold moves that help us step out of survival mode and back into ourselves. And I'll tell you right now, this conversation is going to meet you exactly where you are. So without further ado, let's welcome Andrea. Welcome, Andrea.
Yay. Hi, Samantha. So good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm so excited to talk all about you. But before we do that, we start each episode with our wine and win of the week segment. This is where we share our favorite drink, then about something that's been bothering us and celebrate our recent victories. So grab a glass, take a deep breath, and let's get started. So, Andrea, what is your drink of the week?
I am I'm a big fan of kombucha, and my favorite brand has a new flavor called Island Bliss, and it's amazing and
Mm.
fruity, and I love it.
I always feel like I need to get more into kombucha because I always forget about it. I don't know why. Like, it's something that I'm not a huge soda drinker at all.
Okay. Yeah, me neither.
And I like usually either drink water, coffee, or electrolytes or wine, you know.
Mhm.
Those are
Mhm.
like my 4 drink groups, but I need to get into that. Do you ever make your own?
No, I looked into it over the pandemic and it was like, absolutely not. Same with like sourdough or having chickens. I'm like, I like the
Yeah.
idea of that. Same with having a third child. I was like, I like the
Yeah.
idea of that. Probably for someone else. Yeah.
I can totally relate to that. Someone gave me like a starter for kombucha
Okay.
and I had it like sitting on my counter and I was like, I can't do this. I
Once
just
I
can't
heard
bring
that they're
myself
prone
to
to
do
exploding, I was like,
it.
I don't need that stress in my life.
Yeah. And so what's your complaint wine of the week?
Complaint wine of the week is probably, well, you and I are recording this in early December 2025, just whatever is happening politically, socially, culturally, globally in the moment.
His
That's going to be my complaint.
We just got to put a bow on it, right? And then make it all
Yeah,
better for the holiday season.
just in general.
Just mask it all up. Like,
Yes,
like add in the holiday stress to all that and we
it's
might
wild.
break. I don't know how much more I can take of it all, but um we have it with stress with jingle bells in the background, right?
Exactly. It's very awkward.
Yes. And so what is your win of the week?
The win of the week I'm gonna say is probably this book. It's my 4th book. It's still, I was talking to my partner the other day and I said, I can't believe that I've written 4 books. So it's like
Yeah.
it's me just leaning into my own career accomplishments. That's my win.
Yeah. And can you talk about the book real quickly so that I will get more into it? But I figured while you're to,
Well,
you
I
know,
have it in front of me. I'm so
yeah.
glad you asked, Samantha. It's called Live Like You Give a Damn, and it's 25 chapters. And I got a download one day sitting in the car, honestly. And like, that's how usually books come to me. And it was sort of
hmm
like these 25, to be fair, it was really 20 or 21 or something. And
hmm
I had to make it a nice round number. But it was like these large handful of topics that I felt like, I was a decade and a half into my personal
Yeah.
growth career. And I'm like, what are the things I've written about so many different topics, but like, let's distill it down to like these main things that I think are important for people to just wrap their head around in
hmm
terms of like really living their best life. And so that's how the book was born.
That's awesome. I always love interviewing authors because I'm like, the fact that you can just sit down and write a book is just it's so inspiring. I don't know. And for people to be able to read it and change their life like that forever, it's, imprinted and people can do this forever is just such a cool thing and something to be proud of.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, I look at it as like I was given this gift sort of being like somewhat closer to the veil than a lot of other people. And what I mean
Mhm.
by that is just that I'm closer to the place I think where these messages get downloaded. I am, I try them in my own life. I work on them with clients. I talk about them on the podcast and then I write books about them. So
Yeah.
that's
That's
where
awesome.
that's where it comes from.
And it's funny because as you're saying you get the downloads. That's how the original idea of me starting a podcast came from. I was literally driving home from work one day and something like came into my mind and was like, you should start a podcast. And I was like, I literally laughed. I was like, what do you mean?
With all my
Why
spare
would I do
time.
that? And then here we are almost 3
Here we
years
are.
later, which is pretty, so it's important that for everyone listening to follow those things that we sometimes might think, well, what kind of sense does that make?
It sounds like that was your intuition, like it was with
Yeah.
me too. Yeah.
Yeah. Love that. Well, and I always like to ask my guests, what is one significant challenge you've successfully navigated to shape your journey to where you are today?
Only one. I am 50, so I have collected them. Well, probably I'll say the most recent one, and it was
Uh-huh.
my second divorce. And sort of I use humor and what I think is a healthy amount to
Mhm.
work through trauma and difficult times. And I like to say that I collect ex-husbands. I like to get married and divorced from time to time. It's a hobby of mine. But it was life-changing as it always is, and, navigating just having to make the decision in the first place. And I think that for the first time there's a chapter I wrote in the book called Always Show Up for and Bet on Yourself. And because you're gonna have those really great people in your life, but at the end of the day, like, you have to be able to count on yourself 100%
Right.
of the time. And so that's what I really leaned into over the last 5 years as I navigated that big challenge and life-changing experience.
Yeah. And it's even you can be in a happy relationship or an unhappy relationship, but the bottom line of it really is that you are the one at the end of the day that you have to lean on, like you just said. Like, I think people really take that for granted that they just think, oh, I'm myself, whatever. I have all these people surrounding me, but
Mhm.
they're not working on themselves when they're focused on everybody else, which is it's very underrated in my opinion.
Yeah, I think too, like, if we wanna take it that exactly what you said and take it a step deeper, it's that it's really about, and of course, I lost my train of thought there for a second, so I hope you can edit that out.
I do, yes, I do. Sorry, I meant to
Well, no,
tell you
because
that too. I might do like a
I heard my
timeout
own
or something.
echo for a
Yeah.
second, and I know that happens sometimes with Riverside or any of them. Okay, so we were talking about showing up for yourself and betting on yourself.
Yes, and sorry,
I had a
I'm
good
also
point. I'll start from the beginning. I'll
yeah,
pick it up.
okay.
And if we could take that just like a layer deeper of really our intuition. And that's the thing that I have, now that I'm of a certain age. And we mentioned it before of just doing things that hone that intuition so that you can get those downloads and show up for yourself every time. Running was a way that I honed my intuition, for sure, just like that meditative thing.
Mhm.
And intuition is one thing that I've focused on leaning into really over the last decade.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it's important, and it's so important to trust that, and we are gonna get into fitness in just a second, but as we were kinda talking about running before the show, running has always been something, just like you said, it's meditative for me, like, I can go out, I just think of anything that comes through my mind, just rolling through millions of thoughts, and then it's like afterwards, you're like, "I don't even know if I solved anything, but I feel better."
Worked it out. That's why when I remember going through periods of time, and I think it's such a personal preference, and I'm not here to tell anybody like what's right or what's
Mhm.
wrong. And when we're running, and the big question of do I listen to music? Do I listen to a podcast? Do I have
Mhm.
nothing on? And of course, then we're talking about conversations with safety and things like that, especially if we're running with our while pushing a stroller, if we have them on
Right.
bikes, whatever. But I think that What's underrated is walking or running without anything in your ears and just hearing your own footprints, your footsteps on the pavement, or listening to your kids make their noises, or whatever it is. Like, I cannot tell you how many times I've assigned that to my clients and they've come back and said that was one of the most uncomfortable things I've ever done. It's just like, how often are you given the opportunity to sit in your own silence with your own thoughts and not have anything distracting you? Not having a
Yeah.
phone to scroll through, not having emails to attend to. Like, I think that even just doing that can move mountains for your personal growth and just your mental health.
Yeah. And it's like we were saying earlier, back to yourself, like you're uncomfortable, like with yourself in a lot of ways by saying that you can't just walk in silence for 30 minutes. Like
Mhm.
you have to distract yourself from yourself because, yeah, it's very interesting.
I don't know about you, but, like, I am always uncomfortable. Like,
Yeah.
people
Like
are
thinking
trying.
about that makes me feel uncomfortable. Like it just the thought of it makes me feel like I don't want to do that. Like I would maybe
Yeah.
have to leave the gym if I got there and didn't have my headphones. Like
I often feel at least like 10% uncomfortable or awkward in
hmm.
any given moment, even if it's with
Yes.
people that I deeply trust who are family members. And I don't know if that is a normal human function or if it's because I tend to, I was diagnosed with anxiety disorder when I was 27, ADHD when I was 45, which came first, the chicken or egg, who knows? I also very, very much believe my son was diagnosed with autism in 2013. I don't think that the apple fell far from the tree with that. All that to say, like that, my neurodivergence might be part of it, but I think that a lot of people feel uncomfortable most of the time. And I mean, that is also a large part of why I drank more than I should have at times. And so I say all that because A, if anyone's listening, I hope you know you're normal. And B, I think that a lot of personal growth comes down to just being able to sit in that discomfort
hmm.
without focusing on changing it. In other words, like,
Yeah.
you don't have to, maybe it's not for you to feel whatever normal feels like all the time or comfortable or not awkward. Maybe the plan and, the challenge is just to sit in your discomfort and see what
Yeah.
happens.
I love that. It's so important too. It's just something that, and I think also understanding that, like, when you feel like you're not normal because you're uncomfortable, you're actually normal because everybody feels that way. So it's not,
Right.
you're not abnormal. You're actually very normal. The fact, if, the people that don't feel uncomfortable, they're the abnormal ones because nobody else feels that way.
I think that there might be something going on there, but it's like I like to really put things in perspective sometimes and think about. Some people don't like it when I do this. Like, I like to just name what's there, and I'm like,
Mhm.
for example, like this conversation is kind of weird. Like, we're talking to a screen.
Yeah.
We don't know each other, but yet we know things about each other. Like, sometimes if you just like normalize and say what's there, it can help you just be like, oh yeah, it is weird.
Yeah, it's weird. I know every time before I come on a podcast, I'm like, I have no idea who this person really is. Maybe, hopefully, they're nice, and they all are. But like,
Yeah.
those thoughts go through your mind of just, yeah, it is awkward talking to a screen.
Yeah, we're all a little awkward.
So, the running wine mom fitness. What is your favorite way to stay active?
Now I walk, and I know you and I were chatting before we started recording, and so I think my last I did a sprint triathlon in 2018, and then before that, I did a 5K, I think or no, sorry, a 10K in 2015, and so it's been
Okay.
a minute, and I
Yeah.
got, at the end of that 10K 10 years ago, I knew I was done with running. My now ex-husband, I'll never forget it. And this was only 6 miles, you guys. It's not like it was a marathon. But at the end of the race, my son saw me and he's like, "Oh, there's mom." And my ex-husband was like, I told him, "That's not you." He's like, "I didn't recognize you. You looked so unhappy." Like, and I was
Yeah.
like, "It's because I'm done. I think I'm done running." And so I listened to my body, and then I went into sprint triathlons, which are very short, but I haven't really run since then. And again, that
hmm.
down to listening to my body. And so walking has been my exercise of choice and strength training, but walking.
Yeah. So important. And walking is, I feel like everybody that I talk to, walking is such a huge part of their mental health and just their longevity of walking, which is
Mhm.
most important. Which, speaking of, how does your fitness routine contribute to your mental health, do you feel?
It contributes to probably 85% of it. I know, and I have tested that
Mhm.
but by
Yeah.
spending months not working out for whatever reason, for injury, for just, gotten out of habit. And I know without a doubt that my mental health is contingent upon, and it may even just be the simplicity of getting fresh air. Maybe it's not so much, the cardiovascular benefits, but for me, it's the getting fresh air. It's the getting the sunshine. It's just having some kind of routine where I spend that time with my dog. And it's honestly like, and I come from a fitness background. Like my undergrad is in exercise physiology. I worked in the fitness industry for years before venturing into of a more personal growth standpoint. But if you would have told me even 15 years ago that I would give up running and be a walker, I would have said, "Please tell me that's not true." Like, I had judgment about what it meant to be someone who just walks.
Right.
I wanna say that out loud for anyone listening, that you don't get an award when you're 50 or 60, like, if you're still running, but your hips and your knees and your ankles will surely keep telling you if it's time for you to retire that and do something else, so, yeah.
It's hard as, like, I see as I get older to listen to your body and be like, slow, because I feel like there's such a, you have to push so hard. You have to push so hard. You have to, the only way you're going to get results is if you do it this way. And then it's like, no, like slowing down actually is going to give you results for health for the future, really,
Mhm.
which I think people forget about
Yeah.
a lot.
I learned that lesson. I mean, I don't know what your experience was with having your children, but my first born was a cesarean section, and
Hmm.
he was a frank breech. I didn't have much choice in the matter. And
Me
then the
too.
second time
That's my,
around, I wanted to give birth vaginally. It's this whole thing. It's a whole nother podcast episode to talk about that. And I did end up doing that with a fight. But I remember her labor and delivery. I had never experienced it like that before because I had previously had a cesarean, and so
right.
going through that experience of really being forced to surrender to my body, and that feeling of my body knows what to do, even though my brain might not know. This feels ancient, and like millions of women have done this before me, and I felt like I was so empowered by that.
Hmm.
That was such a great lesson for me to take that forward and listen to my body even when I'm not giving birth. Like
Right.
when my hips hurt and I feel like maybe I should stop
Yeah.
running, like, and, listen to my doctor, because even my doctor had told me, like, I might wanna stop. So I try to take really big lessons that I've received through other times in order to have that carry out, because I think that our highest self is always talking to us in some form or
Yeah.
another, and it's up to us to be open enough to listen.
And I do. I love that. I think we do also forget that, like, our body does know what to do, and it's speaking to us all the
Mhm.
time, whether we wanna listen or not.
Yeah, yeah.
So you have 2 children. How old are they now?
Now, as we're recording this, my son, they had birthdays over the summer. My son is 18 and my daughter is 16, which blows my
Gosh,
mind because I
oh,
feel like I was just pushing them in the stroller.
yeah, gosh. What were you least prepared for in parenthood?
Here's the first thing that came to me. I was unprepared for the amount of tasks that were going to be involved with parenthood, and not just actual tasks, but like the mental load that
Mhm.
would be put on somebody. And I also was unprepared for the conversations that would need to take place in my partnership. And he
Right.
wasn't prepared either. So that was the thing where I was like, I wish that I would have been schooled on that beforehand.
Yeah. That it's everything changes. I mean, it's easy to say everything changes once you have kids, but I feel like even if you're prepared, you're not, because no kids are the same, no parenting experience is the same, no situation is the same. Some
Yeah.
people have help, some people don't have help, some people have jobs, some people don't. It's just there can't be, there's not a rule book, but there really can't be, because I feel like no one is the same in parenting.
It's
No
so
one's
unique,
experience.
and, like, so not only that, you don't know what you're gonna get, and there's so many variations of what could
Mhm.
happen, and then also you're thrust into, if you are parenting in a partnership, like in one home, that's also the part where I was like, even things like my now ex-husband and I, like, we had never had a conversation about gender roles. Like, like one day
Right.
I turned to him and I'm like, I won't get mad however you answer, but like, do you have expectations that may be like unconscious of like what a mom should do and what a dad should do? And he was like, I do. And I'm like, we should have talked about this a
Yeah.
long ago because I see now it's causing a problem.
Yeah. I randomly, before I was engaged, married, whatever, I was randomly subbing in a school district and it was child development class. And
Okay.
I had to teach that lesson actually about like, that was what she left for me to do. And it was talking about like, you should talk to your partner before you move in with them. You should talk to your partner before you move in with them about what your gender roles are and this and that. And I was like, I never, like, thought about that. I thought I was just gonna move in with someone, and I did have that conversation with my husband before we moved in because we both grew up with stay-at-home moms, and I am not a stay-at-home mom. I wasn't gonna be a stay-at-home partner, and, I mean, that was, like, such a sign from above that I never would have done that and never would have experienced that or just, I think a lot of people, the same thing happens. It's like you just get into these gender roles and
Yeah.
then you're like, "Oh, no."
It defaults, like, it's
Yeah,
going to default, like, if you don't have the
right.
conversation, it's gonna default, and I think that
Mhm,
people can probably guess if they've never had the conversation where it will default to, and so
mhm.
that's what I'm encouraging people to avoid, like, that
Yeah,
because whether you know it or not, everyone has expectations when they go into a
yeah.
relationship, and so it's good to voice those so you can manage expectations, so you can be on the same page, because if you don't, resentment will set in, and that is a quick killer of a relationship.
Yeah, it's so true. So what do you think your parenting style is?
Well, so I'm Gen X and I'm like square, well, a little bit on the younger end of Gen X. And I am a classic textbook. And I think a lot of millennials are this way too, like where we swung the pendulum so far the other way in our parenting because we were sort of like unparented.
Yeah.
I read a quote, or maybe it was a headline in an article or something that said something like, our parents, so boomers and silent generation, we had children and our children kind of went in line around our life. And
Mhm,
Gen X and millennial parents are doing it the other way around. Like we have
right.
children and we revolve our life around the child. And I
Mhm.
was like, that is a good summary of like my
Yeah,
parenting
you're right.
style. Just a little too. I was not a helicopter child or a helicopter parent at all, but more so just like a lot of leniency, a lot of, like,
Mhm.
kind of like, figure it out for yourself, but I will be there for you emotionally probably more than I need to.
That's great though. I mean, every kid needs that. The emotional part is so important that
Yeah.
a lot of, that the generation above was not very good at expressing their emotions,
Yeah.
I feel.
If nothing else, like, they know that they can talk to me about anything, and I might have a
Right.
reaction to it, but I
Right.
will do no
Yeah.
judgment.
And what's one piece of advice you would give to other parents?
Depends on the stage. Little ones? I'll go with little ones. If you're in the weeds, and I consider, like, in the weeds, like, 8 and under,
Mhm.
give yourself so much grace. Give yourself more grace than you, even remotely think is possible to give someone. I think that that era is one of the most demanding times of parenting because you're getting it from a mental, physical, and emotional level,
Mhm.
of course,
Yep.
financial, but it's like all 3 of those, and I think that as they get older, it's been my experience that the physical goes away, like, we're not chasing them and making sure they're super safe in that regard, but it's more emotional weight on us, and so give yourself so much grace if you're in it, if you're in the weeds in terms of like, "Oh, I can't make myself a priority," and, like, I see a lot of moms of young kids beating themselves up for not being able to take care of themselves as much as they're hearing they need to.
Mhm.
That's
Right.
the part, like, I want you to give yourself grace for.
Yeah. And that's I feel like, people think you have to have this whole spa day to take care of yourself and you have to, spend an hour doing, the treadmill and then you got to go in the sauna and that's the only way you're going to feel refreshed.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like just take like 5 minutes in a dark closet by yourself and sometimes that's all you really need. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, like, for me, like, if I could just, like, slip one other piece in there too is I had a really hard time contending with the fact that I wanted to work
Mhm.
and that I didn't wanna be a stay-at-home mom, and before I had children, I was convinced like, I was felt like I was destined to be a trad wife. I was like, "No, I'm gonna stay home. I'm gonna just take care of babies and, like, breastfeed them until they're"
Mhm.
I nursed my youngest until she was 2.5, like, that's all I wanted to do.
Right.
But as it turned out, I was like, "Oh, this isn't for me."
Mhm. Yeah.
So it was like, coming to terms with the shame I felt around that and just
Yeah.
I just felt so guilty for wanting to work, and so my
Right.
advice there is find support. Find either a
Mhm.
therapist or a mom's group or other women that you can not only commiserate with, but they'll meet you with empathy and not
Mhm.
necessarily like a pep talk or I have a self-care routine for you or things like that.
Right. Yeah, and that's how I'm like, I don't think I was made to be a I would love to stay at home maybe like half the time, but not all the time. I like working. I love working, and sometimes I do feel shameful that I feel that way because, people are like, "Well, you should want to be with your babies all the time." And I'm like, "I love them so much, but I also really like working."
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
I think there's a spectrum of I don't know what the right word for it, but, like, when you think of motherhood, I think that, like, especially in, like, our modern age, it's like if you there's a camp of people who identify as girls and grow up to be women, like, who have always known they never wanted to have children. Like, we probably have, like,
Right.
a handful of those friends, and, like, I love that they're clear with that, you know?
Mhm.
And then you might have a few who have been on the fence, but usually those are the women who, like, never wanted to have kids, but, like, are considering it typically.
Right.
And then you have the group of women that I was in, like, that always knew that they wanted to have kids. And from that group, I think that there is a spectrum in terms
Yeah.
of, like, how you treat motherhood and how you wanna treat motherhood. Because like, I know women my age and older who they were so fulfilled by it, and they were so involved. And even now, their kids are grown, and they, like, go to the ends of the earth to get them home for Thanksgiving.
Mhm.
And, I am kind of like I don't know if that's gonna be me. Like,
Mhm.
I found myself in the part of motherhood where, like, feel this clear distinction between me and my children. Like, I know where I end and they begin, and
Right.
I'm not saying that anything else is bad or worse. I'm just saying, like, that's how I am, and I say all this because I don't think this gets talked about enough and how, like, there's different variations of how we mother, and just because your version might be a step back from others doesn't make you a better or worse mom. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. No, I really everything you're saying is resonating with me because as you're saying this, I'm thinking my parents literally gave everything for us, like not to us, for us. We had to work for everything that we got, but
But
like
they gave her
their
those lessons.
lives, yeah, their lives literally, I mean, revolved around everything. And I just like for a while, I was like, I just don't think that I can do that for another person. Like, of course, I maybe want to have kids, but I didn't think I could live up to my parents the way my parents raised us, essentially. And like you're just saying, I have two kids. I love being a mom so much. They are the center of my world, but
Mhm.
also I have a distinct in
Yes.
there as well, which is, uh, again, like you were just saying, it's a pendulum of different areas. And I'm
Mhm.
like, I know I'm a good mom, but like, am I not good enough because I don't want to be with them 24/7?
Right. Or because you also wanna work on yourself and yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly.
All right. So let's get into more about you. So, when was the moment that you realized you were done living on autopilot and committed to living like you give a damn?
Probably for me, that moment was in 2006. And so I mentioned I was married before and
Hmm.
I had been with him for 13 years. We started dating when we were teenagers and I was 30 at the time. We'd been married for a few years at that point and we were talking about conceiving our first child. We always knew we wanted kids and my then husband had an affair with our neighbor and got her pregnant. And, I know it was a they had been having an affair for 7 months, like, it was drama. It was, like, it
Yeah.
was, such drama. So, it was a horrible breakup and divorce, and it was
Mhm.
also hugely traumatic because I knew I always wanted to have children. I'd been with this
Right.
person since I was 17, and, I was heavily enmeshed in his family, and so I was at a point where it brought me to my knees, obviously, but also it was a
Right.
point where I realized, I was in my early 30s, and I had this epiphany of like, I've been putting all of my eggs in someone else's basket, essentially,
Yeah.
wanting my happiness or counting on my happiness and fulfillment coming from, in that case, a partner. And I
Right.
think a lot of us are conditioned that way. Like it's like really how like the whole pick me term came from.
Yeah.
Women get into this place where they're like, okay, a man is going to be my happiness and my provider, and just kind of like this kind of to fill in the blank. And I realized I had done that. And so it was an opportunity. And granted, I was scared out of my mind too. Like I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know how I'm gonna do this, but it was the bottom line of it, it was I finally realized like I am in charge. Like I'm the
Right.
common denominator here, and I am in charge of my own happiness. And it was both terrifying and exhilarating. And there was also a lot of
Yeah.
freedom in that because it allowed me to start the process of healing, of understanding, like, okay, what you did doesn't have anything to do with me. It's all
Right.
yours. And like start that whole process of healing. I almost knocked my water off, getting excited. And so yeah, that was my life-changing moment that really brought me here.
Yeah. So after that happened, what was the biggest shift that you made in your everyday life to kind of get over that hump for, besides realizing it wasn't about you necessarily, like that came that
Mhm.
fell apart, but someone who experiences that, I mean, that's like you said, life-changing. And what would you recommend to someone if that was their situation, or their, not even that specific situation, but they hit their rock bottom that they
Yeah.
feel in the moment anyway?
What I did was I finally stopped just like going to therapy to complain and gossip about my life, and actually started
Mhm.
listening to my therapist about what she was observing in my behavior,
Mhm.
and actively worked to change that. And
Yeah.
so, I know it seems simple, but I think a lot of people do this. And I talk about this in the book a little bit, like that liminal space of when you have the self awareness of what's happening, and maybe you even have the self awareness to know what you're doing specifically. And from there, there's this many times this, I call it the point of no return, to where you can see the behavior that you want to change. And then you can also see the behavior that might be in front of you, but you're
Mhm.
either too scared to take action. So you have this, you're kind of stuck in this liminal space of like, what do I do? Either you don't know what to do, or you do know what to do and you're too scared. And so, first, that's normal. Stay there as long as you need to stay there. Try not to stay there for too long, but it can be paralyzing, and there's grief there, and things to do there.
Right.
But when you finally get the courage to take action, and have it be intentional, I would just pick one thing to work on. And so maybe you've never done values work before, and like you have no idea what's really important to how you want to live your life. It would be
Yeah.
good to know that, like, especially moms of young kids. We tend to not, put a lot of effort into understanding that about ourselves. So you can start there. Like for me, it was my therapist had been telling me for quite a while, probably at that point, that I was codependent. And I,
Mhm.
I bought the book, and I saw parts of my life, but I was still, I used to write the names of my friends or like my boyfriend in the margins of self-help books, because I would think to myself, like, they need to heal from this.
Right.
So much the
Yeah.
problem. And so I finally stopped writing their names in the margins, and, like, started to see myself, and really, previously, I was just too afraid. I was too afraid of change and how it's gonna affect my life, and so I finally had to understand that, oh, my life could actually be better. It's gonna be uncomfortable, but it could actually be better.
Yeah, it's important to understand. Again, just like feeling awkward in a room, feeling uncomfortable is totally normal as well. So of the 25 moves in Live Like You Give a Damn, which one was the hardest for you personally to take, and did you shift to do it?
There's always 1 or 2 excuse me, there's always 1 or 2 chapters in every book that I write that are the hardest, and I usually save those for last, because when I write them, it requires me to sit in that uncomfortable feeling of,
Yeah.
this is one I need to, you kind of
Mm,
eat the words. I would say, and probably chapter chapter 6, learn to parent yourself. And so that's about reparenting specifically. And that is something that I've just recently, within the last couple of years, started to dive into.
yeah. Yeah, and that's what I'm always wondering, like, people write wonderful books and of helping others. Do you take your own advice all the time, or
I do.
Yeah,
I'm
I
the type
love
of
that.
person that wouldn't be able to sleep at night if I wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's great. So, talk about knowing better versus doing differently. For a busy mom who's, listening, they know exactly what they want to change, but they haven't acted. What do you think is something that they can do to like start on that journey? They know
Mhm.
what they have to do, but they're not doing it. What can they
Yeah.
do to get there?
I would ask them how they're speaking to themselves when they're not doing it, but they know what to do. So, in other
Right.
words, if you are beating yourself up for it, if you're judging yourself, if you're comparing yourself to other people, like your self talk isn't great, I would start there and focus on having more self-talk that is compassionate and
Mhm.
just accepting that you're there. I'll give you an example. I told you I worked in the fitness industry for years. I even grew up in a fitness household. Do you remember? And I found
Mhm.
myself like for the second or third time, I think in my life, like on a point where I hadn't worked out for months and I was beating myself up over it and, trying to get back in the game. And everyone listening can probably relate, like to one point in your life, whether it's been an injury or it's hard to get back up on the horse. And so I finally I said to myself, you know what? I said, what if the way that I exercise is just seasonal? Like my period, like the moon, like the tides. Like
Yeah.
it's cyclical where
Yeah.
this is just how I work out. I can't tell you how much easier it was to get back in the game. And then it's happened again. And I'm
Yeah.
back in the game faster by just accepting that this is how I operate and it lowers the pressure on yourself. And so self-compassion, as much as like I love to kick ass and like have really difficult goals and have high expectations, it didn't come easy for me to learn the lesson that self-compassion
Yeah.
will actually be the thing that gets you to your goals fast
That
and it feels so much better.
I've read about the menstrual cycle workout, like going
Oh, mhm.
through your cycle, like 28 days of how you should
Yeah.
work out. And I haven't deep dived really into it, but I heard it's like really helpful for your body too, like just accepting where you are and, or even in the winter doing a specific workout versus the summer doing another workout.
Yes. Or even like, yeah, during the school year when your time
Right.
is different.
Yeah. So the other thing a lot of women and mothers, they're bombarded with perfectionism and people pleasing. What advice would you give for like a mom who, especially with social media, it's so hard looking at and holidays, we're in the holiday season now. Everyone's house is perfectly curated and there's no toys anywhere. Meanwhile, I'm looking at like a half
Yeah.
put together tree and my kids' toys, in the background. But how can you have positive self-talk if you're feeling like you're still not good enough based on what you're seeing, or you want to be perfect and
Yeah.
go to all the events because you feel like you have to?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that helped me was realize, and it's been a long journey for me with social media. So
Mhm.
I mean, I got on Facebook in 2007, I think it was, which was the
Yeah.
same year my now 18-year-old son was born. I think the moment that I started questioning who made up the expectations that I am holding myself so tightly to, and I started to give myself some grace in terms of the list I had made largely unconsciously of expectations in order to what? So I just it was
Right.
self-coaching is what it was in order to feel like I'm keeping up with other people, in order to feel like I'm a good mom, in order to feel like I'm the best wife and mother I could be. And so I started questioning. I didn't change anything, but I started
Right.
questioning like who's watching, who's making these markers or mileposts that I'm trying to reach. And then from there, deciding like what I wanted to make important and have not be important. And please know, this feels like years long. You know,
Yeah.
like, I just sat down one night and decided this was
It was a
weird.
24-hour yeah,
Exactly.
no.
And there were, many times of, like, deleting, the Facebook app or the Instagram app from my phone
Yeah.
and things like that, but that was one of the things that helped tremendously was questioning whose expectations
If
are these? And if I can pinpoint it, is that someone or something that's important to me or
right.
not? And yeah.
And if they are important to you, why do you feel that they're judging you? I guess would be as you're saying this, I'm just thinking like if they really care about you, they shouldn't be judging you. So maybe you need to
Right.
reevaluate, you know?
Yeah, and also, like, if you think about, like, judgment, like, I don't love the advice where people talk about, like, working on stopping your judging. We all do it. It's, like, part of our
Yeah.
human survival of how
Right.
we, like, label things and measure things and just part of the human experience. So, for me, it's more about noticing when I'm judging
Yeah. Then
and
you're like,
also notice when I'm worried about people judging me, like, because 'cause they're going to. That's the whole chapter in the book. Like, you're going to disappoint people. They are going
right.
to judge you. So
Yeah.
the question then becomes like, what are you gonna do with that information? How important are you gonna make it?
Yeah. And something that I do see a lot is that moms like admit that they don't find joy or they don't find anything because they're not doing stuff for themselves or constantly doing stuff for everyone else. I actually just saw the movie Oh What Fun. It just came out on Prime. I don't know if you heard of it.
I
It's with
haven't.
Michelle Pfeiffer. And it basically is talking about all the things that moms do behind the scenes and isn't really like appreciated. So right now I feel like a lot of people maybe are feeling even more stressed. But anyway, I was thinking of how it could relate with your book, 52 Ways to Live a Kick Ass Life. It's reconnecting with joy, but so many moms, they can't find what brings them joy anymore. So what do you think that they can do to start rediscovering that?
Yeah, I think that, man, like, that age too, like, again, if you're in the weeds, like, that is
Yeah.
such a challenging time, but it's possible. So here's where I would start. I'm just gonna, like, tick off a few things, like, just suggestions, and
Mhm.
also speak a little bit from experience. And so for me, and this is for probably not a lot of people on your show, but maybe when my kids were really little, one of the things I realized that was stealing my joy was not so much the drinking how much I was drinking at the time, it was the reason I was drinking, and I
Mhm.
was so overwhelmed with new motherhood, and also at the time I was just starting my business. I was just stressed out. We were living in Southern California, and it was just really hard, and I look back on it and realize, like, I was trying to numb everything out. I was so overstimulated all the time and so overwhelmed. I had trauma that I had not dealt with, like, from my first marriage. So there I was just trying to, like, stuff it all down, and by
Mhm.
doing that, like, I was stuffing away the trauma and, like, the painful things. I was successful in that, but I was also, like, snuffing out everything else. And so for me, the answer at the time was to completely abstain from alcohol.
Mhm.
I don't think that that's necessary for every single person. For me, it was in order for me to, like, get to experience the roller coaster that is life.
Yeah.
And I was confronted with all my emotions to, like, learning to even recognize joy. Cause, like, Samantha, when I tell you, like, I didn't even know how to lean in, and it was terrifying. And so
Yeah.
from there, I was able to, lean into something that that's been with me since childhood, and I think a lot of people are gonna relate to this. Like, remember when we were little girls, like, if you had this experience of, like, when you would play outside, especially, like, if you were by yourself, and how much magic you could create around you with, like, just
Yes.
leaves and sticks and rocks and or maybe, like, a few Barbies.
Yeah. Like, I see it with my daughter right now, she's at that age where she's doing that all too.
Yeah, and what it is, it's presence.
Mhm.
It's We hear the word presence all the time, like, what does it mean to be truly present? That's what it is, and so from there, I was able to lean into what was already inside me, like the little girl inside of me that really wanted to, like, focus in on moments. And so, for example, like, one of my favorites was, um this was back, like, even before we had, like, home intercoms. Like, I don't wanna say the name because 'cause I'll wake up, but, I think we had, like, an old iPod or something, like, plugged into a speaker, like the old
Yeah.
speakers in
Yep.
our kitchen. So this was, like, like, 2012-ish.
Yeah.
There was a couple of songs that I would play really loud in the kitchen, and my kids knew that it was dance party time. And so
I
I have
love
some
that.
videos from back then of like when my daughter was still small enough to like get on my back and she would
Oh,
laugh and like and I remember at the time, you can tell by my mannerisms in the video that that was such an everyday moment, and I
right.
never thought, that one day she would be 16 and I wouldn't get to
Oh,
have that anymore, but I have this video of her laughing, and so it's like that small moment of joy,
connection.
let me tell you, like, when you lean into those in real time, it might bring you to your knees, and that's the point is, like, to really lean into the emotion of it, and if you have to do it buzzed, then do it buzzed, like, I don't wanna take that away from anybody because I understand, but just being present whenever
Yeah.
you can.
So what did make you realize that you wanted to live a sober life,
Mhm.
in parenthood or just in life in general?
It was a slugfest, like,
Mhm.
honestly, when I first had the thought, and so for some context, my dad made an announcement, so my parents announced that they were ending their marriage, like, right after I graduated from high school,
Oh.
and a couple months after that, my dad announced that he was checking himself into rehab, and I was like, "For
Mm.
what?" My dad was a beer drinker. I thought everyone's dad drank 10
Yeah.
to 12 beers a night. I never saw him drunk. My parents didn't fight, so he just was like a what you
Functioning.
call a high functioning alcoholic, and
Mhm.
so this was in the early '90s, and so he got sober, and for a long time, I still was like, "Why did you really need to get sober?" Because I didn't see it, and because I was a child.
Yeah.
So when I started to for me, I started to get, like, this intuitive hit that my drinking probably wasn't healthy for me, and so
Mhm.
I don't think it really matters, like, how much I was consuming, but I was starting to hide it. So,
Right.
I was when my I would hear my husband pull into the garage, like, I would find myself standing at the fridge, like, chugging a cold bottle of Chardonnay just to get, like, a few
Right.
more ounces in, and then he would
Yeah.
get home, and then I would take out a new wine glass because I put my other one that I'd already been drinking out of for 2 hours in the dishwasher. So, like, things like that where I
Yeah.
it just started to feel gross to me, so I thought, "Okay, well, if I feel ashamed of the amount, maybe it's something to look at." I did not want to get sober. Didn't
Yeah.
I was so afraid of what my life might look like, and also my identity was wrapped up in being the fun one, like,
Right.
Andrea is always the fun one, it's like, you wanna have a good time at your party, invite Andrea, like, that's
Yeah.
who I was, and it was wrapped up in my identity, and also, like, I truly felt like it was the one thing I had that would allow me to run away from the fear and pain that I was
Yeah.
in, and,
Yeah.
again, like, I didn't want to, but I think what really solidified it for me was when I had a friend who'd been in recovery, and she was so non-judgmental, she was so casual
Mhm.
about it. She was like, "Just just quit for 30 days and see what happens."
Right.
And as a life coach, I know that it's not about the task we assign to our clients, it's what happens when they try to do it.
Yeah.
That's where the real work happens. So
Right.
after 6 days, I was white knuckling it, I was miserable, and I also sadly knew that I was gonna go out and get beer that night, which I did, and then wine,
Right.
but I knew, like, I'm like, "My days are numbered, and I have to at
Yeah.
least try to get sober to see what happens." And I stayed sober, and so I know for me, like, I never like to say never because 'cause I've done plenty of things that I said I would never do,
Yeah.
but right now, it's what's best for me, and it allows me
Right.
to live the life that I want to live.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's something that I was saying, I run and whine, and that's the life I'm in right now, but
Yeah.
maybe one day that that'll change.
And if it ever
Yeah.
speaks to you and, like, also please feel free anybody, my DMs are open, you too, Samantha, like, if anybody ever
Yeah,
wants to talk about it, like, I'm never here to talk you into getting sober, like, that's not
right.
my job. My job
But
is to
just
just, like, be an ear
yeah,
if you're contemplating it. I was 37
that's
at the
awesome.
time and just
Okay.
I felt like my life might be over.
Yeah,
Turns out it wasn't.
it wasn't. Yeah, it's great. So another question I have about in the holiday season, there's a lot of boundaries that need to be set. Moms know boundaries obviously matter, but there's so much guilt that gets in the way. So how can moms kind of begin practicing boundaries in a way that like empowers them versus draining them in not just the holidays, but the whole year?
Yeah, I boundaries are one of those conversations that I encourage people to. So remember when I said, like, pick one thing to look into, and I was talking about how I dove into codependence? That this is another area I would invite people to, like, really dive into because I think that, there's a couple things at play. A, we don't know what to say. Like, how do
Right.
you have a healthy like, give me a script, and, like, that's a lot of what I do for people. But also just there's so much emotion involved that needs to be unpacked. And so, for example, even just starting with like how women are conditioned to be, like we're conditioned to make everyone else happy and comfortable
Mhm.
and not inconvenience people. So for us to set a boundary, like
It's hard.
like our nervous system is telling us like you're about to blow up this whole person's whole life. Like what do you mean set a boundary? So it's part of that boundary work is also digging in a little bit on unlearning how you've
Right.
been conditioned to think about boundaries. Like, it's not just
Mhm.
about, like, what do I say? It's about, like, how do I think about boundaries as a whole?
Right. All right. Well, this conversation has been so much fun. I'm going to ask one more before we go. If someone listening could take only one thing from this conversation and implement it tomorrow, what would you hope that thing is and how can they start?
I'm gonna circle it back again. I think this is now the 3rd time that I've said it, and for people to give themselves some compassion and grace and just give themselves a break for whatever they're
Mhm.
beating themselves up over, either this holiday season or this week or this year or whatever it is. Like, you're human. You're doing
Mhm.
this for the first time. You are raising children. Like, you've never done this before. We're all here doing our first time, and, you made it through a pandemic. Like, that was your first pandemic too.
Yeah.
Like, give yourself some grace.
That's great advice and a great place to end it. So that's going to bring us to the end of another episode of The Running Wine Mom. For everyone listening, if today's conversation stirred something in you, trust that intuition. Maybe it's the reminder that you're allowed to take up space. Maybe it's the nudge to set one boundary. Maybe it's the invitation to choose one tiny bold move and actually follow through with it. Whatever it is, let it be the start of living like you give a damn because your kids don't just need a mom who is surviving, they need that mom who feels alive and is present. As always, thank you for spending time with us today on The Running Wine Mom. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with a mom who needs to hear it. You can follow me on Instagram at the running wine mom underscore. And Andrea, where can the listeners find you?
Probably, Instagram as well, and also I have a free workshop coming up around the book that is, at my website, andreaowen.com.
Okay. Yeah, and I will link all that. I will link the book as well. Thank you, Andrea, so much for coming on today. This was great.
Thank you so much, Samantha, and thank you everybody for listening.
Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us today. Remember, you are strong, you are capable, and you are all amazing. Until next time, keep running, keep sipping, and keep embracing the joy of motherhood. Cheers, and I will be back next Tuesday.